The invitation was sealed with black wax and pressed with the shape of a raven holding a crescent moon in its beak. No return address, no sender, only my name written in silver ink. Mira Calder. I should have thrown it away. That would have been the sensible thing. Ordinary women with ordinary lives did not accept invitations delivered by silent couriers at midnight. They did not attend private balls at abandoned abbeys on the edge of the northern cliffs. They did not put on black velvet masks and walk willingly into places every old person in town warned children never to approach after sunset. But I was not feeling sensible that week. I was feeling lonely and angry and tired of being the careful girl who restored other people's ruined paintings while letting her own life fade quietly in the corner. So when my best friend Sienna burst into my apartment waving her own matching invitation, saying, "Mira, don't you dare say no. This is the Eclipse Ball." Nobody gets invited to Blackthorn Abbey unless someone powerful wants them there. I laughed like it was ridiculous. Then I went to my closet. The dress was midnight blue, not black. I had bought it 2 years earlier for a gallery opening I never attended because my ex had decided that same afternoon that I was too serious, too quiet, too hard to love in public. His words, not mine. The dress had stayed in its garment bag ever since. That night, I took it out. By 10, Sienna was at my door in silver silk and a mask shaped like moth wings. She looked exactly like the kind of woman who belonged inside a forbidden masquerade. I looked like a woman pretending she wasn't nervous. "Perfect," she said, circling me once. I look like I'm about to make a terrible decision. That is usually when you look best. Blackthorn Abbey stood above the sea like something carved out of a nightmare and crowned with moonlight. Its towers were broken in places, but every window burned gold. The old road twisted through dead pines, then opened into a courtyard filled with black carriages, sleek cars, liveried servants, and guests in masks, so beautiful they looked less worn than grown onto their faces. Music drifted through the open doors. Not modern music. Strings, a low cello, a violin crying like it knew secrets. Sienna squeezed my arm. "Stay near me. You dragged me here, and now I'm telling you not to get murdered." That is very reassuring. Inside, the abbey had been transformed. Hundreds of candles floated in iron chandeliers. Long black banners hung from the ceiling, stitched with silver constellations. The old stone walls were covered in portraits, each one darker than the last. Men and women with pale skin, sharp mouths, and eyes that looked disturbingly alive even in paint watched the guests from gilded frames. I tried not to stare. I failed. "You are looking at the wrong one," a voice said beside me. I turned. The man standing there wore no costume beyond a black formal coat and a simple silver mask that covered only the upper part of his face. He did not need more. He was tall, impossibly still, and too beautiful in the way winter is beautiful when it is about to kill you. His hair was silver white, tied loosely at the nape of his neck. His skin was pale enough to make the candlelight look warm by comparison. And his eyes, visible through the mask, were a color I had never seen in any human face. Not blue, not gray, moonlight on steel. "I'm sorry," I said. His gaze shifted toward the wall. "The portrait you were studying is a lie." The painter softened him. He was crueler than that. I looked back at the painting. A nobleman in dark armor stared down at us, one gloved hand resting on the head of a black wolf. "You knew him." A faint smile touched the stranger's mouth. In a manner of speaking, that should have been my first warning. Instead, because apparently loneliness makes fools of women who should know better, I asked, "And which portrait is yours?" His smile vanished. For a moment, the air between us seemed to drop 10 degrees. Then he bowed his head slightly. "Kael. Just Kael? For tonight. Mira, I said before good sense could stop me. Mira, he repeated. My name sounded different in his mouth, older, softer, as if it belonged to someone braver than me. The orchestra changed songs. Kael held out one hand. Dance with me. I looked toward where Sienna had disappeared near the champagne table. Then I looked at his hand. It was elegant, pale, unmoving. This is the part in the story where the foolish girl says yes to the dangerous stranger. I said. His eyes darkened with something like amusement. No, he said quietly. This is the part where the dangerous stranger gives her one chance to walk away. I should have. I did not. His fingers were cold when they closed around mine. The moment he led me into the dance, the ballroom changed. Or perhaps I did. The guests became shadows. The candles blurred into gold. The music moved through my bones, and Kael moved as if he had known the steps longer than the abbey had known the sea. You are not from any of the old houses, he said. I'm from a 2-bedroom apartment above a bakery. That explains the warmth. I laughed before I could stop myself. That might be the strangest compliment I've ever received. It was not meant as one. No? His hand settled at my waist, careful but certain. No. It was an observation. Then observe something else. His eyes held mine through the mask. You came here believing you could be someone else for one night. My smile faded. You do not know me. No, Kael said, but I know masks. We danced for 3 songs, maybe 4. I lost count. Every time I told myself to step away, his hand guided me through another turn. Every time I remembered I was in a room full of strangers inside a cliffside abbey that had no business being lit like a palace, he looked at me as if I was the only real thing inside it. When the music finally stopped, I was breathless. Kael was not. Come outside, he said. That sounds like another terrible decision. It is. At least he was honest. The terrace overlooked the Black Sea. Far below, waves struck the rocks with a sound like distant thunder. The night air tasted of salt, roses, and smoke. Moonflowers climbed the stone railings. Their white petals open only in darkness. I stepped toward them. They bloom at night, I said. Most honest things do. I looked back at him. Kael had removed his mask. I forgot how to breathe. Without the silver covering, his face was sharper, stranger, more beautiful, and less human. His eyes caught the moonlight and gave it back. There was no warmth in his skin, no flush in his cheeks, no rise and fall of breath unless he chose to pretend. I knew then, not in words, not yet, but some old animal part of me knew. What are you? I whispered. Pain moved across his face, something that should not have asked you to dance. I took a step back. He did not follow. Kael, go inside, Mira. The command was quiet. My body almost obeyed. But then the terrace doors opened behind us, and laughter spilled into the night. A couple stumbled out, drunk on wine and each other, and I startled forward instead of back. Kael moved at the same moment. I thought he meant to kiss me. Perhaps he did. His hand caught my waist. His mouth brushed the corner of mine. Then I turned my head by instinct, and his lips found my throat. The pain was sudden, bright, a sharp burn beneath my jaw. I gasped. Kael went rigid. For one impossible second, he did not move at all. Then he tore himself away from me as if my skin had set him on fire. His eyes were no longer moonlit steel. They were black, not dark, black. A thin line of blood marked his lower lip. My blood. No, he said. It was not a word. It was a wound. I pressed shaking fingers to my throat and felt 2 small punctures. The world tipped. The sea roared. What did you do? Kael stared at me with horror, hunger, and something worse than both. Recognition, "This cannot be," he whispered. "Not you. What are you?" The black in his eyes shivered. Silver broke through for half a second. "Run." I could not move. "Mira," his voice broke. "Run now." Behind him, shadows moved along the edge of the terrace. Not guests, not servants, figures in dark formal clothing, all of them turning toward us at once. Kael saw them too. Fear sharpened his face. Not for himself, for me. He stepped in front of me. "Inside," he said. "Find your friend. Leave Blackthorn. Do not return. You bit me. I know. You're... Run." This time power entered the word. My feet obeyed. I ran through the ballroom, past masks and candles and portraits that seemed to watch me with hungry painted eyes. Sienna shouted my name, but I grabbed her wrist and kept moving. We did not stop until the abbey was behind us and the road had swallowed its candlelight. Only then did I look back. At the highest balcony, Kael stood alone beneath the moon. Watching me leave, I thought that was the end. It was not. For 3 nights, I dreamed of him. Not memories. Dreams. Kael standing in a room of black marble with his hand over his mouth, starving and furious. Kael walking through a corridor lined with coffins, whispering my name like a prayer he hated needing. Kael on his knees beneath a ruined stained glass window, his silver hair falling over his face as he fought something inside himself that wanted to follow me. On the 4th night, my apartment windows froze from the inside. I woke to silence, no traffic, no hum from the refrigerator, no wind, just stillness. Then a voice from the dark said, I tried to stay away. I sat up so fast I nearly fell off the bed. Kael stood across the room. No mask, no formal coat, only black shirt, black trousers, and a face drawn tight with exhaustion. I grabbed the lamp from my nightstand. It was not a weapon. It was what I had. How did you get in? Your blood called me. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one. I switched on the lamp. The light flickered once, then steadied. Kael flinched as if brightness hurt him, though it was barely enough to warm the room. You need to leave, I said. I know. Then why are you here? Because if I stayed away 1 more hour, I would have started hunting strangers. The lamp shook in my hands. He saw and looked away, shame cutting across his face. I have not fed from a human in 180 years, he said. I have built laws to prevent what I did to you. I have executed monsters for less. And then I made one mistake at a masquerade and marked the one woman whose blood my body refuses to forget. Marked? His eyes lifted. You are not simply bitten, Mira. You are echo-bound. The word moved through the room like a match struck in darkness. Echo-bound? Among my kind, there is an old law. Older than courts, older than crowns. Once in a vampire's existence, if he tastes the blood of the one soul made to answer his own, an echo wakes between them. That sounds very poetic for a curse. It is a curse. Good, we agree. It is also a bond. I stood, keeping the bed between us. Break it. I cannot. Then find someone who can. His jaw tightened. The Nocturne Tribunal might. But if they learn a mortal woman has bound the Raven King by accident, they will not see you as a victim. What will they see me as? A weakness. The room seemed to shrink around me. Raven King, I repeated. Kael looked almost tired enough to laugh. Kael Draven, sovereign of the Nocturne Court, lord of Blackthorn Abbey, first blood of the Raven line. I stared at him. You said your name was just Kael. It was the safest truth I had. I should have been terrified. I was, but beneath the fear, something else stirred. An ache I did not want, a pull toward him that felt like hearing my name called from a place I had never been but somehow missed. He saw it on my face. His expression softened, and that softness frightened me more than the fangs. "You feel it," he said. "No, Mira, no." "All right." That surprised me. He stepped back toward the window. "I will not force truth out of you. I have already taken too much." "Where are you going?" "As far as I can before dawn. And then I lock myself somewhere deep enough that I cannot reach anyone when the hunger comes." "For how long?" His silver eyes met mine. "Until I can no longer think your name." Neither of us pretended that sounded possible. Before I could answer, he vanished into a rush of cold air. The next morning, I canceled 3 restoration appointments and told my supervisor I had food poisoning. She didn't believe me. I didn't care. The boxes from my mother had been sitting in my hall closet for almost 4 years. 2 of them I had opened the week after the funeral and immediately closed again. Old photographs of relatives I couldn't name, school report cards, a child's drawing of a horse signed with a name I'd never heard. Grief makes objects unbearable in a very specific way. The 3rd box I had never touched. I dragged it into the kitchen because the bedroom suddenly felt wrong, and because the kitchen had the kettle in it and I needed to be near a kettle. The tape on the lid had yellowed. My mother had labeled it in her teacher's handwriting, "Aunt E, keep." That was all. No explanation. My mother had explained everything in her life with the careful brevity of someone who taught middle schoolers, which made the lack of explanation here feel deliberate. Inside there were no pressed flowers. I had expected pressed flowers. There were instead, in this order, a wool shawl folded into a square and smelling faintly of cedar, 2 photographs in a plain manila envelope, a tin of throat lozenges from a brand I had never heard of, a travel chest about the size of a bread loaf, locked, and a silver key wrapped in black ribbon taped to the inside of the lid. I unwrapped the key. The ribbon was old enough to have lost its slip. It crackled. I sat on my kitchen floor and looked at the chest for a long time before I opened it, because some part of me already understood that I was about to lose the version of my family I had grown up believing in. Inside was a journal bound in oxblood leather, the pages edge-gilt in gold that had mostly worn off. The cover was warm to the touch in a way leather should not be. When I opened it, the smell that came up was not the smell of old paper. It was, and I am only telling you this because it is what happened, the smell of moonflowers. On the inside cover, in a sharp, slanted hand, "If you are reading this and your name is not Margaret, you are in trouble. E. V. March 1962. My mother's name was Margaret. I made tea. I sat down at the kitchen table. I opened the journal again. Elowyn Vale, it turned out, had been a complainer. The first 20 pages were full of grievances about her landlady, the price of cigarettes, a man called Tom who had taken her dancing twice and then married someone named Patricia. She had a venomous wit and a tendency to underline words at random. Tom is the kind of man who orders steak well done and considers this a personality. I laughed out loud, which surprised me because I had not laughed in 5 days. I almost set the journal down then. It was just a woman's notebook from the 1950s. But on page 23, the handwriting changed. I met a man tonight. I do not know what he is. I know what he is not. He is not from Cambridge, though he said he was. He is not 32, though he said he was. He is not breathing all the time. I watched him at the bar for an hour and counted. He breathes when someone speaks to him. He breathes when he laughs. The rest of the time he is still in a way that water in a glass is still. His name is Aurelian Draven. I read the next 4 pages standing up. She had met him at a winter party in Edinburgh. She had been working as a translator for the British Museum. An entire chapter of her life my mother had never mentioned to me. He had asked her to dance. She had said no. He had bowed and gone away, and then she had spent the next 6 weeks looking for him in every room she entered. When she found him again, in the reading room of a private library in London, He was waiting for her. He told me what he was on the second meeting. He did not soften it. He said, I am very old. I am not alive in the way you understand the word, and I should not have come back to find you. He said this while making me tea. The juxtaposition has not left me. I had to put the journal down to laugh, and then I had to put it down again because I was crying, and I could not tell which one of us I was crying for, Elowen or my mother, who had grown up next to this woman and never said a word, or myself, who had spent 29 years thinking my family was boring. I read until my back hurt. Then I read leaning against the radiator. Then I read on the floor with the journal flat in front of me and my chin on my arms. The story Elowen told, when I assembled it from her tangents and crossed out lines and the recipe for shortbread she had inexplicably written between two entries about Aurelian's condition, was this. There was an old curse on the Draven line. She did not pretend to know its origin. Every vampire has an origin story, and most of them are vanity, but she had seen its effect. The Draven kings stopped feeling. Slowly, across decades, they became, in Elowen's phrase, very polite weather, unless they found what she called, with deliberate plainness, the other half of the sound. She did not write Crimson Echo. She wrote the other half of the sound. I liked her better for it. A human, she explained, whose blood did not weaken a vampire king but did the opposite, gave him back the parts of himself the curse was eating. Memory, restraint, the capacity to be embarrassed. Aurelian blushed once, she wrote, and looked at his own hand as though it had betrayed him. I knew then. She wrote about the courts only twice. The first time was one sentence at the top of an otherwise blank page. They will say, I am the danger. I am not. They are. The second time was longer and angrier, and the handwriting was bad enough that I had to read some of it twice. The Nocturne Tribunal, she wrote, taught their young kings that an echo-bound human was a weakness. This was a lie they had told for so long that they had begun themselves to believe it. The truth was the opposite. An echo did not soften a king. It returned him to himself. A king returned to himself was a king who could refuse the tribunal, which was the only thing they could not afford. So they made a law. The echo was either turned or veiled. Turned, and she became a queen, and the bond changed shape, and the king kept his crown, veiled. And her memory of him was burned out of her mind, and she was returned to her mortal life like a borrowed coat. There was, Elowen wrote, a third option. It had not been used in 400 years. She had been planning to use it. Then, in different ink, smaller, as if added later. I did not. I left him instead. He thought I had stopped loving him. He was wrong about a great many things, my Aurelian, but that was the only one I could not stand him being wrong about, and I let him die wrong. I closed the journal. It was almost dark. The radiator had gone cold against my back. I had not eaten since the night before. I felt, for the first time since Kael had put his mouth to my throat, that I understood what had happened to me, and that the dangerous part of it was not the man in the black coat. On the last page, in the same slanted hand, Elowen had written one more line. I think she wrote it for whichever girl in her family eventually found the chest. I think she suspected it would be a girl. She had the kind of mind that suspected things. Don't refuse him because someone tells you to. Refuse him because you want to, or don't refuse him at all. The third option is real. I lost my nerve. Don't lose yours. The knock came at midnight. I opened the door before fear could talk me out of it. Kael stood in the hallway, one hand braced against the wall. His eyes were black again, but he had not come closer. Tell me to leave, he rasped. I held up the journal. Your father knew my great-aunt. Silver cut through the black in his eyes. Elowen. You know that name. She disappeared before I was born. My father searched for her until the day the sun took him. The sun took him? Kael's mouth twisted. Our poetic way of saying he chose death. The hallway lights flickered. I stepped aside. Come in, Mira, No. If you were going to hurt me, you would have done it already. I am not certain that will remain true. That was not entirely true, but I wanted it to be. He entered as if crossing my threshold cost him pain. I led him to the kitchen because it was impossible to be properly terrified of an ancient vampire king while standing beside a kettle and a stack of unwashed mugs. I pushed the journal toward him. He read in silence. With every page, something in his face changed. Grief, recognition, hope so sharp it looked painful. My father thought she abandoned him, he said at last. She thought she was saving him. She killed him slower by leaving. I did not know what to say to that. Kael closed the journal gently. The tribunal lied, he said. About what? They teach that an echo-bound human is dangerous because she makes a vampire king weak. But this says the opposite. It says she makes him feel. To them, that is the same thing. His control broke then. Not all at once. A tremor in his hand, a sharp breath he did not need. The black returning to his eyes like ink dropped into water. Mira, he said, voice rough, I need to go. I touched his hand. He froze. His skin was colder than marble. What happens if you drink from me? His eyes closed. Do not ask me that. I am asking. The hunger quiets. The bond steadies. I remain myself. And me? You heal faster, age slower, dream louder, feel me when I am near, sometimes when I am far. That already happens. His eyes opened. I would never take without your permission again. I know. No, you do not. Mira, I have been worshipped, feared, obeyed, betrayed, but I have not been trusted in longer than your country has existed. Do not give it to me lightly. I'm not. I moved my hair aside. His entire body went still. This is my choice, I said. Not the bite at the ball. This. For a moment, he looked almost young. Then he knelt, a king kneeling on my kitchen floor. He took my wrist first, not my throat. His lips brushed the inside of it, asking even then. When his fangs pierced my skin, pain flashed quick and bright. Then warmth followed. Not pleasure exactly, not like the stories. Something deeper, a door opening inside my ribs. I felt his hunger, yes, but beneath it I felt loneliness older than any grave. I felt discipline, shame, a terrible tenderness he had locked away so long it barely knew how to breathe. And then I felt relief. His, mine, ours. When he lifted his head, his eyes were silver again. The small wound closed under his thumb. You are crying, he said. So are you. He touched his face as if he had forgotten tears existed. I was not aware I still could. The next 2 weeks were impossible. By day, I restored flaking saints and cracked landscapes at the old museum. I cleaned varnish from the faces of dead nobles and pretended I did not know. Some of them had probably once attended dinner with Kael. By night, I entered Blackthorn Abbey through a side gate that opened only to my blood. Kael kept his promise. He did not rush me. He showed me the library first, because he had learned quickly that I trusted books more than people. He showed me maps of hidden courts beneath Europe, treaties signed in blood and ash, old laws written in languages I could not read. He showed me the rooftop garden where moonflowers grew year-round. He showed me the locked chapel where every Draven king had placed the names of those he failed to save. His father's name was there. So was Elowin's, though she had not died. She lived to 91, I told him. Kael stared at the carved name. Did she love him? I thought of the journal, of the pressed black rose hidden between pages. Yes. His jaw tightened. Then he did not die entirely alone. On the 15th night, the tribunal came. They did not knock. They entered the grand ballroom of Blackthorn Abbey as if the house belonged to them, 7 ancient vampires dressed in mourning black. At their center walked a woman with white hair braided to her waist and eyes like frozen glass. Kael's hand found mine. "Do not let them smell fear," he murmured. "I am terrified." "I know. Lie beautifully." The white-haired woman stopped beneath the shattered ceiling fresco of a raven swallowing the moon. "King Kael," she said, "you have hidden a mortal echo from the court. I have protected a woman I harmed. You marked her, by accident, and fed from her after, with permission." The tribunal turned their eyes to me. I wanted to step back. I did not. The woman smiled. "Mira Calder, restorer of paintings, last living branch of Elwyn Vale's bloodline. How inconvenient." Kael went very still. "You knew," I said. Her smile sharpened. "We know many things. Then you knew what the Crimson Echo really does." Silence. Kael looked at me. I kept my eyes on the tribunal. "You teach that echo-bound humans weaken vampire kings," I said. "But you know they don't. They restore what the crown slowly destroys. Feeling, mercy, restraint." One of the older vampires hissed. The white-haired woman lifted a hand, and he fell silent. "Careful, child." "No, I'm done being careful in rooms where powerful people decide what I am." Kael's hand tightened around mine. The woman's eyes flicked to him. "There are only 2 lawful outcomes," she said. "She turns and becomes queen of the Nocturne Court, or the echo is veiled, her memories are taken, she returns to her mortal life." Kael's face hardened. "No, you do not get to refuse law because your hunger has become sentimental. It is not hunger." "No?" The woman stepped closer. "Then prove it. Let her go." The ballroom became very quiet. I felt Kael's pain through the bond before his face showed anything. He would do it. That was the terrible thing. If I asked, he would let them tear me out of his life and then live forever with the emptiness. That was when I understood the difference between possession and love. Possession would burn the world to keep me. Love would burn itself first. I stepped in front of him. "I choose neither." The tribunal stared. "You do not make law," the woman said. "No, but I read it." I lifted my great-aunt's journal. Elwyn wrote down the old covenant. "Before the tribunal changed the teaching, there is a third path." Kael looked at me sharply. I had not told him this part, because I had only found it that afternoon. "The mortal echo can remain human under a living covenant," I said, "protected by the house, trained by the court, bound by consent only, not turned, not veiled, not owned. That covenant has not been invoked in 4 centuries. Then you remember how it works. It requires the king to surrender absolute rule." Gasps moved through the court. I turned to Kael. Now he understood. "Mira," he said softly, "you told me your crown was a cage." "It is." "Then put it down." His eyes searched mine. "Not for permission, for certainty." "I will age," I said. "Even with your blood, I will still be mortal. I will get lines on my face. I will have bad knees someday. I will forget where I put things. I will probably become very annoying." A broken laugh escaped him. "I find you annoying already." "Good. Then you're prepared." The bond between us warmed. "I'm not choosing forever," I said. "I'm choosing real." Kael turned to the tribunal. "I invoke the living covenant." The white-haired woman looked furious. "And afraid?" That told me everything. "Name your successor," she said. "Marcus Vale." Every head turned. A man stepped out of the shadows near the western doors, dark-haired, calm, familiar in a way that made my breath catch. I had seen him in a photograph beside my great-aunt. "Elowyn's Marcus," I whispered. He bowed to me first, then to Kael. "I wondered when you would get tired of the cage, boy." Kael smiled faintly. It took longer than expected. The covenant was performed before dawn. There was no crown, no throne, only a silver bowl, a black rose, and 3 drops of blood willingly given. Kael's, mine, Marcus's. When it was done, the abbey changed. I felt it accept me, not as queen, not as prey, as witness, as choice, as living heart of a house that had forgotten it needed one. 1 year later, the Eclipse Ball returned. This time, I did not arrive as a guest. I stood at the top of Blackthorn's grand staircase in a gown the color of deep wine, no mask on my face. Kael waited below in black, silver hair loose around his shoulders, no crown, no throne, no ancient loneliness hiding behind his eyes. Marcus ruled the Nocturne Court now. Kael advised when asked and disappeared when bored, which was often. I still restored paintings. I still lived part of the week in my apartment above the bakery. Sienna still complained that my boyfriend was terrifyingly hot and impossible to Google. I had not become immortal. Not exactly, but I healed faster now. A knife slip that once would have scarred vanished in a day. My hair had not changed. My face had not aged in the years since the covenant, though Kael warned me time would return eventually, only slower. I did not mind. Forever had always sounded too large to me. But this life of moonlit gardens, old books, dangerous courts, morning coffee, museum dust, and a man who looked at me as if every ordinary breath I took was a miracle, this I could hold. At midnight, the orchestra began the same song they had played the night we met. Kael held out his hand. Dance with me, Mira Calder. I raised an eyebrow. This is the part where the dangerous stranger gives the foolish girl a chance to walk away. His smile softened. No, he said. This is the part where the woman who saved him decides whether he has earned another dance. I placed my hand in his. You have. As he led me into the ballroom, I glanced toward the terrace where everything had gone wrong. No, not wrong. Wildly, impossibly right. A mistaken bite, a broken law. A mortal woman, a vampire king who put down his crown. Some love stories ask for eternity. Ours asked for courage. And that was more than enough.